Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And today, in this series, The Day of, we will be talking about the Day of Fear. For you see, you and yourselves, your party, you round the crest, heading down the path towards the city state. But passing you by are members of that community, and they're leaving, their heads cast down, their eyes flittering around, afraid. They are fearful. The fear is an internal one. Each of them kind of consumed, embraced, maybe even trapped in their own fears. Player characters being yourselves, being adventurers, being bold. But today, on this day of fears, maybe, just maybe, entering into the city might be your doom, a doom of your own making. All right, guys, let's get into the intro and then talk about the day of fear. All right. um, as written in the chat, yeah, fear is there's a uh, very popular, although I cannot remember the individual who said it. There is a line that says the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And while I believe in that concept, there is something about there's a logical reason for all of us to have a level of fear, because fear is a natural instinct to protect ourselves. And in role playing games, the meta of having characters who don't have fear and don't are not afraid of the unknown, they're not afraid of enemies, kind of goes counter to the idea of what fear really is for us. And so I think the idea of using the day of fear in your games may be a shift, and it could also be something that's a little bit more introspective. Now, we do have games, the classic, all of the classic editions of the Call of Cthulhu series, which literally embraces the idea of horror. And thank you there, dead man. Here, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And yeah, yes. Thank you very much, by the way. And the reason for that was for that comment, that very classic quote came about because it was it was during a well, not that there isn't any tumultuous time, but all time seemed tumultuous really for the people going through it. And the idea is that don't let us not be paralyzed by being afraid, because the fear itself is causing us such harm, such paralysis, and such baggage that we're unable to make a move. And we often hear about uh, soldiers, especially, not being afraid. But even amongst the soldiers themselves, it's not being afraid. It's acting in the face of fear. And oftentimes, for those who are lovers of tabletop role playing games that deal with fear, and usually the classic sanity mechanic is how effective is my character? How much further can we progress in these stories before the fear takes a hold of my character and I can no longer act? And that is a very different concept to role playing games, where a lot of people measure effectiveness of their player character by, well, death. If death is taken off the table, some people feel, well, there is no role playing game. But in horror games, it's more about um, the equivalency of death is paralysis by fear. And on the, yeah, yep, exactly. Yes, Vince says the paradox of this idea is that not wanting to fear the fear makes it harder to do it. Yes, and again, maybe there's a logical reason to be afraid to do the thing, right? How many people have gotten in trouble for having a lack of fear to do it? Um, very, most recently, like I'm a gentleman of a certain age, so my wife and I, we love cruising. Cruising has come back full force, and so it has gotten back in the news. And most recently, we found there's a photograph. Some people say it's fake, but it doesn't matter. The idea of two kids, teenagers maybe, sitting on the balcony of a cruise ship with their legs dangling over the edge. Now, cruise ships tend to be 5 to 10 story buildings floating uh, um, places of like entertainment and such. Now, no logical person would want to hang out on the balcony of a 10-story building. And but on a cruise ship, some people feel, maybe they get a little loosey goosey. They are some libation has lubricated what they want to do. They've lost all meaning of home training, and then they do things that are extremely dangerous. And there is a reason for having fear to not do the thing. And maybe that fear uh, takes the place of sometimes common sense so that it keeps us safe. So even if something doesn't seem, or we lose all common sense, the fear keeps us from engaging in the thing that will be most dangerous to us. But we're also very creative, right? As human beings, we can come up with 1,000, a billion scenarios over and over and over in our brains to prevent us from doing a thing. And I think this day of fear we can use to shape that. So it may not require us to be afraid, or to elicit that kind of fear out of us, but we could also shape the game mechanically and flavorful to say, hey, these are things my character would fear, or these are fears in this world. And on this day of fears, those fears become much more tangible. They could even become far more personal to each player character. But these fears, maybe there's truth to having these fears, even if these fears are not normally seen in the gaming world. Vince says the first thing I think about is the demon that some people tell is sitting on their chest when they experience sleep paralysis. Yeah, there's if we take a look at um, fears that people have, like for example, you know what, I'm gonna search for the top. I'll say the top 10 fears, top 10 most common fears, and some of these can be a little bit difficult to capture. But so, like for example, ooh, I don't know if I'll be able to. You know what? I'll just share it out. Let's see. Because I'm this is going to be brutal trying to pronounce these. I hadn't even. You guys know, I'm not one I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Yeah, Vince brings up a big one. Public speaking. Yeah, death. All right. This first one. Let's see if I can go to this website, because maybe it'll be a little bit bolder for you guys to see it. Here it goes. So very quickly, social phobia, fear of social interactions. That's a huge one that so many people have. As a matter of fact, just the ability to go into a room of people you don't know and start conversations is hugely important. And then if your social status is a little bit different, employee to employer, things like that, family members, maybe familial relationships that have broken down or something. Yeah. And then there's trypophobia, fear of circle clusters. Um, Fear of circle clusters. Although this common phobia could come off as silly at first, many people have a very real struggle with trypophobia or trypophobia. There are many theories of what causes trypophobia, most of which point toward human evolution. The image of circle clusters are reminiscent of things we as humans have feared in the past, like infectious diseases and dangerous animals like bees. Circle clusters. So I guess it means like clusters of it's a cluster, probably circles. People who have fears of that ha- is related to other fears, and we see clusters of circles of those things, like a swarm of bees being a cluster, or looking at a petri dish, or having disease-like wounds on the body that are in circles, or something like that. Maybe a cluster of people that seem violent. Fear of failure, tychiophobia. Fear of death is thanatophobia. Uh, Nossophobia, a fear of developing a disease. Arachnophobia, fear of spiders. Vihophobia, fear of driving. Claustrophobia, fear of enclosed spaces. Acrophobia, fear of heights. And aerophobia, fear of flying. I think all of us are probably on a spectrum of some sort in here. I believe that there's probably other fears in this listing that uh, many of us would have, like fear of dogs. Dogs, birds are a big one. Snakes are another one for animals and such. Let's see. Yeah, acrophobia. Yep, fear of heights. Mm. There it is. Ophidiophobia, fear of snakes. There, Vince. Yeah. Mike Merritt says, saw a post on D&D Reddit today about common fears. The net result is a D&D monster with a spider body, syringe legs, teeth joints, and a clown face which drags you into deep water. Yeah. While burning. Yeah. Um, I almost feel like, not to make fun of other people's fears, because I know this could be very triggering, but to be honest there, M squared, like, I think the dragon could be looked at differently today, because in ancient times the dragon kind of represented our base fears, right? A dragon represents snakes and fire and flying predators and um um an intelligence that we can't understand. And classic dragons didn't look anything like air quoted modern dragons look today. The modern dragon is more of an artistic expression, whereas some of the ancient dragons were more Lovecraftian in their appearance. And I think of monsters that um, are more modern, or have a combination of our more modern fears, would be pretty hellacious, right? Like syringe like legs, and you know, if it swallows you, you fall into a ever falling pit or something like that, you know. And or a monster that somehow has the faces of the people. Maybe a person's overcome with a lot of guilt, and it has the face of a person that they've harmed in the past and can't speak to them or see them. Yeah, Mike says, goes on to say, it's a bit of on the nose, but I think people do fear cultists wielding syringes and the implications of what they can do more than cultists wielding axes. Hell's yes. The sleep paralysis thing, right? The idea that you are many people have fears when they fall asleep, simply because they are vulnerable when they sleep. There are horror movies based around a person who is paralyzed, maybe in the hospital or something, and things are done to them, but they can't tell anyone because they're completely paralyzed. Yeah. Ugh. Vince says recently I see a lot of giant screaming baby enemies. If you want some nightmare fuel, they're legit terrifying. Oh, the idea of mixing the innocent with horror is always a thing, which is why oftentimes you see in horror movies you'll see like dirty baby dolls and just like somewhat ravaged and destroyed children's toys, oftentimes in a lot of horror movies, because it's it's the innocence next to the horror. There's nothing more horrible than one of those classic, I don't know, porcelain doll splashed with like blood or something with webs on it, or spiders walking around it and such. So yeah, baby enemies, baby fuel is very much a thing. Vince says fear of developing a disease. I have a story. I'm not gonna read that out. Okay, all right. Oh, okay. My father knew a woman who had this fear, but at the same time, she thought that if she believed in God, she would never get sick. Yeah, and then she feared. Yeah. See. Yeah. 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 Um. Us in the past, well, even in modern times, but very much in the past, people believed that if you became diseased, it's because of something you did. It was a punishment, and what a very on this day of fear, maybe innocuous things start happening to people. They attribute it to a fear, and then that fear becomes real. Maybe there is a a non-lethal but a spreading disease amongst the population, and then they themselves begin to have a fear, and then that fear itself starts to spread. Yeah. Now Shice brings up agoraphobia, um, a fear of wide open spaces. Has anybody ever actually met anybody who has that? I think you'll see agoraphobia from people who, or at least slight versions of it, like spectrum versions of it, low levels, from people who have grown up in big cities and then go out to wide open places. Um, I don't know if some a doctor would um, would diagnose someone with this, but there's a lot of big city dwellers who absolutely positively will never go to the middle of the United States, right? The flyover country where you have wide open fields and forests and deserts and plains and things like that, and feel very uncomfortable in a place that doesn't have um, buses and noises and crowds and people. I used to have to sleep with a sound generator. My wife was always thought it was odd. I used to sleep with a sound generator that had the sounds of city sounds. Uh, if you guys don't know, they make sound generators that sound like rain or water washing ashore on the beach. But I would always turn it to where you hear like horns beeping, and you could hear the sounds of diesel engines and the sounds of people's feet walking and things like that. So now I love where I live, and I love wide open spaces, but that I think that's a true thing. There's some urbanites that are just like the more grass, the more they hate it. So it's often wild, but yeah. Um, Vince says, yeah, that this fear is often with people who don't want to go out for one reason or another. And to be honest with you, maybe we just don't see those people. Um, yeah. Shai says, I love sleep paralysis. It's like a free uh Ahuska trip, and you don't even have to go see an Amazon medicine man. I don't know if I would love that. Um, I think I don't know if I ever suffered from sleep paralysis, but I remember being a kid and having half your body fall asleep because you slept the wrong way, and you're just sitting there like, I can't move, and then you start getting the tingling sensation back. Yeah, I bet it's much worse than that. But also, Also, I think on the day of fear, like I said, maybe these fears are absolutely positively real, but the we don't get a chance to see them except on the day of fears. So, for example, there are some monsters in Dungeons and Dragons that, um, uh, despite the fact that those monsters are very popular in the game, sometimes they're problematic. Um, the big three are these ghostial, uh, fearful monsters that are, um, what is the term to call them? They shut characters down. Okay, and one of the things that they do, I'm talking about uh, shadows, ghosts, and banshees, wraiths. These types of fantasy Dungeons and Dragons monsters do things. Ghouls are accounted in there that do things that prevent the players from acting mechanically. So ghosts can take possessions of people. Ghouls can paralyze. Shadows drain characters of their strength, which circumvents the hit point. The hit point uh, system. There are monsters that paralyze, mind control, possess, have illusions. They basically prevent player characters from acting. And they're very there's been a tendency to go away from those kind of monsters. So they still exist, but you don't often see modifications to them. You don't see different styles of shadows. You don't see different types of ghosts that have those abilities because it's seen mechanically that that mechanical feature has a detrimental effect to players' ability to enact in the world. But I dare say, on the day of fears, what would be kind of cool would be to embrace those things within the game and go, guess what? This these these enemies, shadows that can drain your strength for your character. And hey, wizard, I know you have a strength of 8. That you know when a shadow drains 1d4 strength points and you're dead when all your strength is gone, is pretty horrible if you're, I don't know, a 17th level wizard or something like that, and you could still be killed by a simple touch by these monsters. And those are some ways like to incorporate those kind of monsters, especially together, overlapping them and having them work together or something, would be a real threat to players, and then that threat becomes a danger. That's why the game Dread is a very popular indie game by using. Let's see if I do I have the game nearby. It's up in my closet. Okay, above my head. But anyway, there's a game called Dread that uses a building blocks Jenga tower, and that game. Let's see. Let's see if I can find an image here. Ooh, there we go. Dread Tower. Um, and it uses. No, I want to share this out. Um, and it uses the Jenga tower because it supplements our fear by having this thing in the game, and by virtue of pulling a block and it possibly falling kind of represents the fear that's in our head. And so, yeah, I like how the building blocks Jenga tower is like filled with blood right here. It's pretty funny. But yeah, Dread vintage RPG. Mm-mm-mm. But yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, you guys. Let's see. Wayne says society's greatest fear today is that the Wi-Fi will lag out. Yeah, I don't have a signal. I've seen. You know what? I know you're being kind of sarcastic, but you're not, because I've seen people like completely fail and falter when they don't have a internet Wi-Fi signal, and their brain literally has to disengage from that to think about how to do other things. And it's like, why not just grab a piece of paper and write it down? You can find that information that you're going to look on your phone by asking someone else. Vince says, I know a girl who has schizophrenia and she does not want to leave the building. Another one has paranoia and thought there were snipers on the other buildings who would hit him once he goes out. So much for fear of open spaces. Yeah. And but by the way, Vince works with individuals who have very are on the varying spectrums of having these psychological issues. So yeah, hitting very close to home with you there, V. Uh, Squad says, are there any unseen entities or fear monsters that are only in your head or only on the, like astral ethereal plane, incorporeal psychic or psionic monsters or anything like that? There are. And to be honest with you, one of the most warrior-like ones is a famous one that was first seen in the Fiend Folio, known as the Githyanki, and the Githziri, which were just basically human beings that lived on the astral plane, I believe. But what's another one? Phase spiders are pretty common that are able to go ethereal, and especially if the players don't have the ability to become intangible or affect intangible creatures, but those creatures can go intangible and affect their minds. I think night hags have the ability to, or something like that, where they go into their dream state. Yeah, maybe it's our fault that we aren't using them the way they are supposed to be intended to be used. Meaning, like those monsters that are able to become ethereal, maybe those creatures aren't being used to their full potential. A list of D&D monsters that can become ethereal. Let's see if there's a list of this. Nope. All. There we go. Always going back. I always seem to go back to the Forgotten Realms wiki. Medusa? All right, I'll share this. I will share this list out, but I don't know how effective it's going to be. But maybe we'll find something in here. Oops. Yep. Come on, computer. It's a little difficult to see. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger. All right, and then I'll get into what you guys have to say. Here are some. Oh, those are trending pages. All right, so we have, let's see, Intellect Devourer right here, Keening Spirit. Never heard of a Drelb. Lamasu? Creature from the Outer Planes, Demon, Devil, something like that. They have a Medusa. Medusa? I haven't heard of that. Okay. Ebon Tiger. We got Ephemeral Swarm, Ethereal Dragon, Ethereal Marauder, and Ethereal Ooze. Eye of Fear and Flame. These aren't the most popular things. Ooze, Para Elemental. Foo Creature, like the Foo Dog and the Foo Lion as well. Forgot about those. Phase Spider that I mentioned. Thought Eater. Ooh, the Tween from the Fiend Folio. This is an unsung. What would you say? What's the best way to describe it? A first edition and second edition. Tweens were parasitic spirits endemic to the ethereal plane, though they were not a type of undead. Yeah, when not attached to any host, tweens appeared on the border ethereal to those on the prime material plane as smoky or shadowy humanoid silhouettes. Typically, this was reminiscent of a squat human. Tweens were very intelligent spirits, but they lacked goals or independent purpose. And let's see if they give their abilities. Tweens possessed a limited form of shape change and could only be harmed by creatures who could enter the ethereal plane or had some other effect like oil of etherealness. While attached to a host, they could move material things at short distances. Once a suitable host was found, tweens would shadow their target's every move. When this bonding action truly began, it would appear as a vaguely visible shadow adjacent to their host's own. After several hours, the bonding became permanent, with neither the tween nor the host being capable of voluntarily severing it. And mechanically, tweens had the ability to subtly alter probability in the vicinity of the host, which extended out to about 50 feet or 15 meters, and they could see a few seconds into the future. Through these combined abilities, the tween granted their host greater luck. However, this positive probability was robbed from others within their host vicinity, whether they be enemies or allies, afflicting them with bad luck. I forgot how they did that. I forgot the. I cannot remember how they did that. Okay, sorry. That's what happens when you go down a rabbit hole. All right. But let's get back to what you guys have to say. Vince says having no electricity and water is a legit fear of mine. Would be very disturbing suddenly being cut off. For a while, I had a prepper fear. Like if I wasn't prepared enough for because society would collapse and that kind of thing. Preppers have those kind of fears. Like um, basically that civilization itself or civilized behavior would go away because we hold on to civilized behavior very tenuously. Yeah. Vince says, I think in Doctor Strange, there is an invisible world where various fear demons live and attach to people. On the day of fear, I could see the player characters being able to see the fears that are attached to people, just riding behind them. And if the wrong thing is said or done, that those fears become unattached and become like a physical thing, or maybe because the player characters can see the fears. There's this idea that if you can see it, it gets to see you. Looking into the abyss means the abyss looks back at you, and that would be very fearful as well. To like on the day of fear, you know, PCs have been in this town for days, no big deal. But on this day of fear, they get to see all the fears that people have and go, holy shit, like, we better get out of here because for every person here, there's like a collection of fears just sitting on their shoulders, right? Sitting right behind them, ready to attack the PCs. That would be fearful as well. Like the player characters are like, how many people live here? Oh, I don't know, 687. Like, we are not rolling initiative for 687 fears and monsters, right? Mm-mm-mm. Mike says, Phantasmal Force is a great example. It allows the fear to be intangible, specific, and still stat blocked. Yeah. Ouch. Again, you could substitute, characters if you're using classic, Dungeons and Dragons. Their intelligence, wisdom, charisma could become it would be the substitute for like strength, dex, and con, maybe something like that. So like, it's not that you could ever outrun your own fears. You have to battle them with common sense and your strength of will and your instincts and your personality. Yeah, Vincent, sadly, a lot of people know only the gimmick of the Jenga tower, and some game designers like to shove it in the idea of the tower in games where it does not fit. Yeah, it's because it's a easy tool, right? That the Jenga tower fear mechanic is a physical, tangible example of a thing that we can become afraid of without like really doing harm to us. And so yeah, people grabbing it and going, I'm using it for my, I don't know, space opera sci-fi game. It's like, I don't know if that fits. Vince says, I work with old people and some who have psychological issues. So, again, steer me if I go down the wrong dark paths, of course. I always welcome that. Mike says, a fantastic warm-up question of what's your character's greatest fear coupled with abstract stat blocks for sentient illusion or shadow demon monsters can make a great party specific battle. Absolutely. Like, could you imagine? Here's an example. Before the game starts, and using these day of prompts, by the way, um, sometimes it can give us a way to maybe engage at the table differently. So maybe you want to come up with something, or maybe the other players want to come up with something like, you know what, let's play, let's add a little horror to the game, even though maybe horror doesn't really fit into well. And you go, okay, here are 10 fears. Which one of these is something your player character like? It would be the fear that spikes above the others. There are people who are not afraid of things who have a fear of not being afraid, right? So that even that works for characters that are like, well, my character would never be afraid, except my paladins, like my fear would be that I go into battle and become afraid, you know. But it would be pretty interesting to fight one monster, but it looks and acts and reacts and has a physical representation that's different for each player character. So one player character is afraid of spiders, so they're fighting so to them, they are literally fighting the stat block of a giant spider. But then another person is afraid of ghosts, and so literally in the same spot as a giant spider, to them it's only a ghost. And then a third player is afraid of darkness or something, and it's a shadow. And then each of them, well, that's a little too close. But you get my point, right? That would be pretty interesting. Or maybe the player who's afraid of the thing only sees the thing, and everyone else is going, I don't see what you're looking at. And like, but I'm getting scarred up. I'm losing hit points. Can't you see the scars on my body? And they're like, I don't see it at all. Yeah. Yeah, Mike says, especially if the party team up and fight each other's fears, or use one guy's fear of deep water against another guy's fear of burning buildings, etc. Now that sounds really creative, especially creatively switching back and forth. Like a player's like, hey, my character's afraid of fire, therefore, on the day of fear, I can affect everything else except that fire that's like living fire, and I can't affect it, but you guys can, which, I don't know how many players would embrace that, but that would be kind of cool to be like, yeah, the thing that I'm afraid of, I can't make any die rolls against it. Only my allies can. And then they have to figure out a way, okay, you're afraid of fire, but then so-and-so's afraid of drowning, and so-and-so's afraid of, I don't know, open spaces or something, and you're afraid of heights, so I'll climb up there because so that you don't have to, or whatever. Yeah, it would be pretty interesting. Since you're afraid of spiders, I'll convince the spider to go into the fire. And yeah. Like Vince says, I like those questions. What makes your character angry? What would he protect at all costs? Emotions are so much more interesting than stat blocks. I wonder if you could numerically make a numeric value off of something like that to make it a game, right? Like, I remember making 6 stats. I was going to make a horror game that was a 5th edition reskin of a horror game, and the 6 stats were flail, flee, cower. Oh, I can't remember. Oh shit! You're gonna make me do it. Let's see. It's please don't go away. No, I'm not going to share the tab, but come on, computer. There it is. I know it's going to run a little slow. Oh, yeah, the 6 stats were cower, flee, hide, plead, flail, and scream. And so cower was like constitution, like you could become a protective shell, turn away from things. Flee was outrunning things, that was like your dex. Hide was like taking cover and remaining quiet, kind of like stealth or whatever. Plead was like convincing or coercing an enemy. Flailing was like wildly swinging and attacking or destroying something, breaking things. and screaming was drawing others or distracting enemies. So yeah, I kind of did something like that. Yeah. Githyanki are actual people, though, right? Tangible creatures that just had to make their home on astral plane. Isn't that the story? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Githyanki were very much like uh Gith. Yes. Let's see if we can find some images of them. Images and place them up here while we talk about this. Seriously, come on. There we go. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, Githyanki are like warrior psychic beings that and I believe they kind of have a slightly sad story in the sense that they escaped enslavement, if I'm not mistaken, by like mind flayers or something like that. Their whole society, and they escaped enslavement, and they go around basically like astral pirates. Yep, yep, yep. So I know that's very generalized, but yeah. Um, Mike Marin says presumably Medusas are fear monsters because of their visage terrifying people into stone, hence the term petrify. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, in maybe that's a very early version of like world building where like you're so afraid of this thing it freezes you in your place. So like Medusa's a Medusa could be very much reskinned into, a cloaked figure, and once you see their face, they freeze that person and they can never move again because they're just overcome with fear. Well, he says, I don't understand why the Realms Wiki writes as if things are in the past tense, as if the entire world no longer exists. It is written like that. Yeah, it is written like that. Oh, man. Yeah, ready for doomsday with DBJ. Yep. You great prepper talk show host. Yeah. So everyone, here are the seeds you need to gain together as humanity crashes around you. Always have a go bag, right? Buy an empty missile silo. You won't regret it. Yeah. When he says civilized behavior is vanishing, I fear the internet is increasing how fast this is happening. Um, um, Tacking on to that comment there, Wayne, I feel like people more now than ever are rationalizing their irrational behaviors. Um, a lack of accountability, losing social graces, uh, just doing dumb things, and then going, well, that's not my fault. Going like, yes, it is. Take responsibility for your own actions. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, yeah, Drew already brought that up. Yeah, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. Yeah, but is that true? There's a little bit due to that, right? Yeah, I mean, I grew up as a very, I mean, I had psychologically problematic stuttering when I was young, and a lot of that was social fear. I had a huge social fears and things, and I maybe not the smart thing to do, but my mom wanted me to break out of it and kind of tested me, like try to push me out of my social fears, and then eventually I started hitting them head on. That's why sometimes you'll see me. I'll hesitate a lot in my speech and search for the right thing to say because my brain wants me to stutter through the complication of finding the right word. And so now I learned the technique of uh, gapping my vocality by stretching words out to give me space to find the next correct thing to say so that I don't stutter. So I kind of taught myself to shut up, basically. Don't embarrass yourself and then think of the next thing. And that technique I use now when broadcasting, because I have to fill the space with audio features. Whenever you're doing a broadcast of anything, you don't want dead space, and dead audio is terrible if you're doing podcasting kind of thing. So I've kind of trained myself to do it, or at least threw myself into the deep end and was like, figure it fucking out there, DBJ. All right. Drew says, for my own system, I had at one point in the character creation that everybody had to take something the character is afraid of, but I changed that to anxieties instead. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is very brand new for us as a society to consider psychological issues to basically be spectrumizing, which I think Wayne brought up the idea of like society collapsing. I think, unfortunately, we don't embrace the fact that we are all psychologically, um, dare I say, disabled. We, at any given moment, we are all on the spectrum of psychological issues. Sometimes they're turned up literally moment to moment, right? You do an all-nighter, or you haven't had enough to eat, or you've just heard some bad news, and here's your spectrumized. You start turning the dials up, right? I mean, there's very small things, and today I think people are just so triggered um, by things. But I practice, and my wife kind of sometimes doesn't like it when I do it, but I have this thing about like not wasting my time on other people, and when other people make me mad, I just refuse to get mad at it. I'm like, I'm not wasting my mind is too important to have somebody else's issues rent space in my head. So I'm just like, F you. It's all about you. Go about your business. You be an asshole somewhere else. I have other things to do. Shai says, how about on the day of fear, you take a big penalty on your three best stats, thus making it like one of those dreams where you can't run and get away or do anything to stop what's chasing you. Ooh, forcing people to do the thing, to do the least optimal thing, because like you said, the the runner that keeps tripping, the strong person that seems very weak, the intelligent person that can't quite get an idea in their head, even though it's on the tip of their tongue. I kind of like that. I kind of like it. Hey, and again, the idea of using these prompts on the day of, especially the day of fear, is maybe it only lasts for 24 hours, right? Hey players, this is an aside, right? For this moment of time, we're going to try something out, and the player's like, okay, well, I'm game for it. Now, at the end of it, they might say this sucks, which kind of proves the point, right? Like the frustration of going like, hey, your top three attributes, we're knocking them down to like a 5 or a 6 just for today. And the wizard's like, I can't cast a spell because I can't remember it. And the warrior's just like, I'm fumble fingered. Fuck. Would be pretty interesting. Although, I wonder if players could discover that their fourth, fifth, and sixth attributes become richer due to the fact they have to rely on them. A warrior fighter type that uses magic to get out of a situation, something very creative. The wizard who grabs their staff and fights off the spiders using, uh, physical aggression to do a thing, even though they feel normally that they would be very weak. That would be kind of a cool thing, like to be like, guess what? You're going to switch your stats. And like, oh wow. Deadman says the story of Githyanki is that they were slaves of the Illithids until they escaped from them. I thought that was the case. I had to pull that out of my ass, but yeah, that they were a race of humanoids that were like enslaved race by the Illithids, and lived on the astral plane and traveled around, and they eventually escaped. And Githziri are based on the plane of limbo. Githziri are boring. It was just like, we need monk-like humanoids with psychic abilities. Let's call them something else. It was like, To me, it came across as very lazy writing. The Dark Eye, that's the one. That's the game about the. Anyway, Vince says in the older versions of the Dark Eye, all characters had negative attributes: fear of height, fear of closed spaces, greed for gold, anger issues, superstitions, and fear of death. And all characters had these. Ooh, ooh. Jay says, "Holy hell, you two! My best friend, the Shy Squad drummer, had a speech impediment too. Really messed him up, but he overcame it after years of speech therapy. Now he just twitches once in a while. Wow, 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 wow. Yeah, mine was completely social. It wasn't a um like a some debilitating mental effect or like genetic or something like that. I didn't have a lisp or a feature that made me do that thing. But yeah, I used to I used to stutter all the time, and it was because I couldn't. My mind was moving faster than my mouth, and I was already assuming I was assuming the outcome of a conversation that hadn't happened yet, and so as I started talking, I was like, oh no, I'm stupid. I can't believe I said that, and they're going to think I blah blah blah, and that's kind of how it went. That's a lesson in how to TPK your players. Yeah, you're all going to use your least valuable stat. Have fun, guys. Here's dice. Vince says in newer versions of the Dark Eye, they did more of the toolkit built philosophy where you pick and choose your negative attributes. But I still like the idea that everyone has certain problems. If you can find players to embrace it, I mean, listen, there's a reason why all of the Call of Cthulhu games are still existent to today. It is a cult following because there's there is a pride in feeling like I am successful because it's not about surviving. It's I survived longer than the rest of you guys, right? And there's also the idea of having at least two vectors of loss. So, like in Call of Cthulhu, you can get shot in the shoulder by a bullet, or you can, open up the Necronomicon and have your brain become scrambled eggs, and blood starts pouring out of your tear ducts, right? So, you know, Vince says Call of Cthulhu is huge outside of the USA. I did not know that, and I love the idea of embracing other cultural role playing games, either from their culture or how they handle it. Like I've heard Japan has a huge underground of different types of role playing games and how they do them. Yeah, and now the funny thing is, fifth edition does have a sanity mechanic. It really does. Is it used often? No. It's a little bit. It's undercooked and uses older terminology for psychological issues in it. It kind of mechanizes a thing that today we have a better understanding of, and I don't think it's been rewritten. But in Level Up Fifth Edition, there is a rewritten form of fear and strife. So in Level Up A5E, the strife mechanic is like the mental exhaustion of the physical mechanic, which is called fatigue instead of exhaustion. And strife, you get levels of strife, and you have to rest and recover to get your strife back. And then at a certain point of strife, you end up rolling on tables where you get these temporary levels of mental affliction, and it goes up into permanency. So, yeah. Shai says DBJ overthinking, where you become a second level cognitive processor. Yeah. Now I like now I'm at the point where, like, doing these live shows and such, I don't know what people are going to say. I don't try not to do any research so that things become normal. I want to be I'm allowing myself to have input so that I'm always being like tested again. Like, oh, you got to react to something else that somebody said or did or influenced or whatever. Yeah. But I really, this episode, um, the Day of Fear, we could, to encompass this, maybe, and these are just little side notes because I actually have something to say at the end of this about doing an interview. I will be doing an interview next week. But one of the things on the day of fear, maybe people like the day of masks, maybe people cover themselves or attach things to themselves that represent the fears that they have. Maybe people on the day of fear do the opposite of trying to stay away from their fears, but embrace their fears. Like a person who wears a medallion or amulet or something or a handmade spider because they know they're afraid of spider and they hate the idea of wearing this thing all day. But yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Um, I think that would just be cool in the day of fears where it's like, oh yeah, hey, mechanically speaking, it's like, guess what, players? Remember all those monsters you were afraid of? Remember game balance and using CR? I'm throwing all that out. Guess what? Today you're going to be afraid. You're going to be very afraid, right? Yeah. This is in one game, the GM can choose which kind of GM he wants to be by choosing an almost almighty dragon. He is inside the game, okay, to a certain point, and those dragons have different actions they can take. Ryutama, I believe is the name of how to pronounce it. Ryuatama? Wonder if that, I know Ryu is like a school education, something like that. Oh, this lets me. I did not know. Sorry, I just found out a feature of my of my streaming that I didn't realize. um, oh, Vince says, "Would love to join you again." Absolutely. Yeah, Vince says, "Yeah." I mean, that's a very classic character, right? Says, I mean, isn't that the reason why Batman chose bats as his totem, that he fears them? Yeah, it really was because he ended up having an irrational fear of bats. Not it wasn't that irrational. Supposedly fell into a pit in or chamber or something in his home that ends up leading to the Batcave, and he had this fear of bats. And then he goes to see Zorro or the Phantom. Um, uh, of the theater. What is the play with the Phantom that burnt the acid burn? Phantom of the Opera. I got it. Okay, sorry guys, I got it before you did. So goes to see Phantom of the Opera in some stories, saw Zorro in other stories in a play, and was scared. I believe there's even a third one where he just goes to the opera and they have like people dressed as bats and things like that. Or the Phantom itself. The Phantom of the Opera is one, and then the other one is the Phantom, which is another character, more of a pulp character. And then there's Zorro, which is another one. But the black, the cape, the masking and such remind him of the bats. Got scared, goes down a dark alley. Parents get killed by a burglar, and then all that comes together where he embraces the idea because he wanted to put fear into people, and he himself was afraid of bats. Not necessarily other people. I mean, people do have a fear of bats. Let's be honest. I mean, there's a place in a great place in Florida that and I did this when I went to visit Florida. I had some family down there. But anyway, there's a bridge where during the day, hundreds of bats sleep under the bridge, and then as the sun goes down, the bats come flying out from under the bridge to go eat. They gnats and mosquitoes and other bugs. Florida's a big giant swamp, so the bats have plenty to eat. And people every day just go up on the bridge and they sit there with chairs and they talk and stuff. And then, I mean, like clockwork, hundreds of these bats just fly out from under this very small bridge to eat these bugs and stuff. And bats can be a little. I mean, they look a little bit scary. Anyway, allow if you guys remember. Let's see if I can find this again. Doug Heroines Labyrinth. So if you guys remember, a while ago, I did a series based on this writer, Douglas A. Burton, and the Heroines Labyrinth. And remember, I was doing it as a comparison of the Heroines Labyrinth to the Hero's Journey. Well, if you don't know, this writer is written a number of books, and right now, he's working on a book about the heroine's labyrinth, which is looking at the hero's journey, but an alternative to the hero's journey is himself creating the heroine's labyrinth. Well, this writer, and I did some videos about it. So through a course of events, he ended up finding a video that we did, live stream that we did about the heroine's labyrinth, and reached out to me. And so we will be doing a video together, kind of half um, half of a interview and analysis of the heroine's labyrinth and opposing that to the hero's journey and such. And it was pretty good. And you know what? Let's copy this and put it in the chat. But yeah, he's going to be on the. We're hopefully we'll be doing it next Thursday, and we won't be doing it in the morning. I'll be doing it in what will be evening my time, and then we'll put it up on the page, and then I'll try to get as many people to tune in as I can. But yeah, the heroine's labyrinth, and there's he did an interview on Heath's Geek Verse and talking about the heroine's labyrinth, and it really, like, if you want to be a writer, um or what we're going to sorry, if you want to be a writer and you're tired of the hero's journey, please look into this. As a role-playing game, spark for role-playing game, I was wondering if there's a way to turn this into creating encounters, um something different than using the hero's journey. And thank you. um wow, that's different. Can this be moved? I guess it can't be moved. So anyway, I feel honored that a writer of some repute would reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I'd like to do an interview with you and your small ass channel and your squirrely, randomized, awkward, uh, tongue twisting that I do on a daily basis." You guys honor me by being here. Deadman says most of Batman stories have Bruce Wayne and his parents going to see The Mask of Zorro before they were murdered. Yeah, but before The Mask of Zorro, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Phantom of the Opera, and I'm thinking 50s, 60s ish. And for some reason, I remember seeing a movie version where it was like just the opera, where people were dressed as bats, cloaks, masks, and cloaks that just looked bat-like. I want to say, was that Zack Snyder? Drew says, I was once bitten by a bat during a night when I played in a vampire LARP. Really? Ow. Oof. I always thought bats for the most part were like pretty docile things. That, I mean, we thought they looked funky, but that they really are like, they didn't never really want to even get close to human beings. Yeah. Mike says, hopefully it brings more dedicated folk in. But that said, I'm not here to be part of some vanilla impersonal Twitch streamer conglomerate horde. Yeah, that's why. Can I be before I get out of here? Let me be honest with something. Um, uh, yeah, Drew says Batman Begins was that with the bat actors. Yeah, it was. Yeah, maybe it was undefined in Batman Begins. They were just at a play and they had people dressed as bats. Maybe that was it. But very commonly, it very much was the Mask of Zorro, especially in the comic books. They used that Mask of Zorro theater marquee quite commonly, or like a poster on the sidewall or something like that. And listen, Zorro is very much a comic book styled character. So in comic books, you definitely want to draw that out, right? I mean, got a mask, got a sword, swings around, very pulp action. So relating Batman to Zorro, it very much is more in line than, say, like a Phantom of the Opera or something like that. But to be honest with you, the okay, at, early on when I used to do when I started the live streaming, and I realized that I didn't really like doing talking head videos where I'm just talking to a camera and then trying to edit it down. And all. I was like, I can't edit. I'm terrible at speaking like that. And then I realized I like talking with people. And I feel part of me is like, there is a desire for me to go like, oh, I wish my channel was bigger. And then I go, fuck, if it gets too big and too busy, I'll lose that personal touch because I get out of this as much as you guys get, like, right, the like Drew brought up, like, hey, thanks for the para friendships that we're having, and like I get something out of it too, right? Like, this is my coffee in the morning, otherwise why would I get up? It, if my channel is steadily growing by like 2 or 3 people a week, so like I'm like at 22, fuck, maybe like 2252 now, 2253 or something. If I had 10,000 subscribers or 50,000, would I even be able to juggle? I mean, then I'd have to have moderators, and Dead Man would be like, "Oh, I'm unpaid now. I got to do this shit too," right? I mean, there's already a Discord server that I don't even touch any longer, which I still, every day I get offline, I'm like, fuck, I feel guilty about that. So yeah, the interaction with it. But I will say that what's the term called? Opportunity is luck, but luck in preparation. And maybe I'm not the most skilled person, but I do overproduce. And the fact that somebody found out um, about, let me see, let's go to YouTube. Let's see if I can find the Heath's Geek First Douglas Burton. So if somebody wants to check that out, because he's Geekverse, he does all live streams, and the live streams are, yeah. Did I find? Yep, that's it. Okay. Let me get the thing to put them out there, and there it is. Share. Let me get the link. Share, copy. So yeah, bam. And that's a link to the YouTube channel where on Heath's Geekverse, he talks with Burton about the Heroine's Labyrinth. And that's when I started doing the videos of the Labyrinth versus the Journey. And the Labyrinth is more internalized. And he was saying, like, a lot of Batman stories are not heroes' journeys. Most of the Batman story, not most, many of the Batman stories are Heroine's Labyrinth stories that he created, where it's not the hero going out into the unknown. It's the heroine. It's just happened to be genderfied, but it doesn't matter. The labyrinth is the protagonist protecting the inner circle, their culture, their location, rather than going out to an unknown place. They're going deeper within to an unknown that has been sitting there the entire time. Squad says small fry independent creators automatically get throttled nowadays. Algorithmic demolition, yep. But I bet you already know that all the stuff. Yes. Oh fuck. The unfortunately, I know how the algos go. I just don't want to play that game, and it works against me. Druden says I like Heath's channel, but the chat in his live videos is far too toxic for my taste. Really, the chat. Oh, see, during the day I can listen to it. I never engage or read the chat. um I just hear, so I listen to a lot of stuff, I never see it. So wow, that I've been protecting myself. Yeah, yeah, yep. Mike says this is true, but I think whilst the quality of reward of viewership, ad revenue, yep, clout, subscribers will get throttled, the quality rewards of community, personality, utility are not measured. They don't really and there's the mechanisms that they use for that are, they don't, all those mechanisms are outside of the platform. So like YouTube, I guess YouTube has memberships, but if you notice, most of the hardcore fans of people on YouTube, they have Patreons. They use a Coffee or Ko-fi, Ko hyphen fi. They use Patreon, Coffee. They have merch. They have memberships. They have paid live streams. And Discord, all that stuff is actually outside the platform of YouTube. So really, what ends up happening is those creators, some of the greatest creators, narrow down their fans into a core group. And yes, they monetize, yes they do, but they also have time aside. And some of the greatest creators can balance that, have that great balancing act where, hey, they're RPG creators and they also play games with the people that are part of their game and have that kind of stuff. Part of me can't wait to retire, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. When I retire, I am not putting on a Walmart vest and being a greeter, right? I'm not doing that. I'm doing this as a full-time thing. So yeah. Vince says, I mean, it's all about what you want to achieve. Personally, I would agree that I love interacting with you, and it would be a shame drowning in the chat. Yeah, that's why I said I might not now, but if I start doubling subscribers because of some weird thing happens where an interaction, like this guy Douglas Burton reached out to me, something like that could happen. Someone somewhere friggin' finds my channel and goes, hey, or maybe I reach out to somebody. Like I thought about reaching out to be on someone else's channel and being like, hey, if you want some more content on your family of networks, I'd love to be part of that. I can't edit down what I do, but it would be, I think someone creative could edit down what we do and make those as real podcasts on a podcast platform or something. Yes, Mike says, so if that's what you're after, as I am, then there's a virtue in not getting noticed. Yeah, right. That, I mean, my thumbnails, do I make some thumbnails that every once in a while get a little clickbaity kind of? Sure. But I mean, do I promote? Am I very good at promoting myself? Not really. And I know it. So I work in computer science. Even the guys that run the algos don't know how the algos go. Yeah. Tendencies. Even AI has certain trends. Mr. Beast is not so high in the trends all the time without reason. Yeah, and some people know how to play that trend game, right? Like they do all the SEO searches. Let's see. Here we go. SEO optimization, right? Um, you know, search engine optimization is basically like, what are people interested in, and then I'm going to do the thing as that interest hits the cusp. I will do material that's based on that search engine optimization period. Yep, it's a process of improving the quality and quantity of website traffic to a website or web page from search engines. SEO targets unpaid traffic known as natural or organic results rather than direct traffic or paid traffic. So for example, if something is trending, then in the media or the culture or some kind of memeable thing or whatever, then eventually those SEO type of processes will rise to the top, right? So yeah, but anyway, guys, yeah, and you know what, we could get into all that kind of stuff, yeah. Yeah, thanks there. Thanks, Em. And your emojis show up as emojis now. Thank you, Restream. I appreciate it. Anyway, guys, yes, we're getting the time clock check. Thank you very much for being here. I will have more communication with Doug, who seemed very hyped to want to be part of the show. And the test will be we know what the hero's journey is. You can look up the hero's journey and find that out, right? Matter of fact, I'll type that in here. Heroes, 12 stages of the hero's journey. And we have all kinds of platforms for that. But what if there's something different? And can we shape that into like encounters for role playing games? Right? Is that something we can do? Is my voice getting a little higher? It sure is. Not on purpose, but yeah. So anyway, thank you very much for being here. I even tried to make myself a little fearful by having people stand around me, like, get away from me, stop standing behind me. Guys, have a great one. Oh shit, I didn't decide what we're going to do tomorrow. Okay, we're going to do. Let's do something fun. We did some dark things. Let's do Day of Storms. Let's do that. So let's share this out. Let's say the image. Boom, 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 boom. Sorry. No, I want to share this window. Yes, that. Thank you there, computer streaming service. I can't drag. So tomorrow, Day of Storms. Thank you very much. Thanks, M Squares. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, as we get closer to Thursday, I'll do a little bit more promotion. Maybe I'll send something out on Facebook or something. I don't even use Twitter. Damn, I'm such a Luddite. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Day of Storms tomorrow. Peace. And of course, I'll set up the link just when we get offline. Anyway, have a great one.